Actually did not deselect them. That's because unfortunately in Maya there is no indication as far as what your current selection type is, what components are being selected. So you have to kind of just remember, or always before you make a selection, hold down the right mouse button and be sure you're in the correct type of selection. I think we were last in edge because even though we converted the edge to UVs, our last selection mode was still edge. So when in doubt, always right click and hold and make sure you're in the correct selection mode before you make any further selections. So since we want to deselect these UVs at the bottom here, I'm just right clicking. I'm not holding down any modifier keys, just right clicking and holding, and then 3 o'clock position UV. And now if I hold down control and left drag a marquee, enclosing all the points at the bottom there, it deselected it. Okay, so I'm going to take this top selection of points and let's snap them to that top edge using this button here. As you can see, there's 4 of them. This snaps to the top, snaps to the bottom, snaps to the left, and to the right. Now one thing I want to make clear, these do not necessarily snap to the edge of the UV space. That's just a coincidence because the points that are furthest to the top are happen to be at the align with this top edge here. More specifically, what these buttons do is they snap to whatever is the furthest point in that direction. So for example, I'm just going to move these really quickly just to show you what would happen here. So I'm going to move that point a little bit down, and I'm going to move this point a little bit down. Again, this is just an example. You don't have to follow along with this. And then I'm going to go back to edge selection mode. I'm going to do what I did before. And if I click on this button now, it's going to align all of these selected points to that point there, because that one is just a little bit higher than that one. So this will be the point along which, at least in this direction, toward the top, all these other points are going to snap to. Okay, so it's not necessarily the edge of the UVs, but whatever is the furthest UV point going in that direction, that's going to snap to. Okay, so let me go ahead and undo all of that to get these back to the corners. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and get back to here, UV, deselect, snap to top, and I'm going to repeat the process for the bottom. And these I'm going to snap to bottom, which is this guy here. Okay, so we're almost there. There's just one more step in the unfolding process. Then it's just going to be a matter of maybe doing some cutting and sewing and moving pieces around so that we minimize the amount of distortion here. So this next step will be, I'm going to select all my UVs, and what I want to do is I want to keep all of these UVs that are touching the edge of the UV space. I want to keep them there. I want to snap them, but all of these points in between I want to relax further, and eventually what's going to happen is all these points in the middle are going to fill in such that everything is going to be very even. It's going to end up lining up like a grid. So that's what we're going to do. But to do that, there's a special mode. There's actually 2 ways you can do this. You can either just select all the points in the middle, or there's a special option box, and I'll just show you right here. If you go into Tool, Smooth UV Tool, you have the option to pin borders. Now, you need to be careful with this because I would suggest if you ever use the pin borders that you keep this window open and then you just hit apply, because if you hit apply and close and this option is checked and you forget it's checked, it's going to cause you a lot of confusion later on. So just check this when you need to and then uncheck it as soon as you no longer need it. Otherwise it's going to trip you up later on. So you can either have this checked, which will automatically deselect the border, or you can just select all the points in the middle manually, and it'll do just about the same thing. But let me just show you what this does. So I'm just going to go ahead and check this on and hit apply. Notice how that automatically deselected those edge points, and I'm going to relax, click and hold and drag to the right, and you'll see that everything lines up perfectly in a grid. So we're actually back to where we started from, because these were the UVs that we first had. But we are going to make some changes such that, as you can see, there's probably going to be a lot of distortion with this particular layout. So we're going to do some cutting and some moving of pieces around such that we minimize the distortion. Okay, so let's see how much distortion there is by overlaying this checkerboard pattern. You can use this. This is the built-in one. It saves us from having to connect a texture into it, but it only works out the object mode. So within the perspective view, your 3D view, right click and hold over the object and 2 o'clock position object mode, and go ahead and select it as an object. And then if you click on this checker icon right underneath the magnet, we'll see that there is a significant amount of distortion here. Look how long these rectangular bars are. So we're going to need to make some additional cuts and reorganize this a little bit such that instead of being these very tall rectangles, that these each of these individual cells is a little more like a square rather than a tall rectangle. So the way we do that is, well, we don't need to see this anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and toggle that off.